The first day of the playoffs of ESL Pro League Season 20 has come and went. The first round of the playoffs saw some of the biggest names in the tournament dueling out to survive and make it to tomorrow. Leading the way, we had Virtus.pro taking on Heroic, followed by Big taking on the Mongolz, Spirit taking on Furia, and then running out the day with my two favorite teams duking it out, Complexity taking on Faze Clan. If you missed out on the action live, you're in the right place to get your same-day recaps of the biggest tournaments in Counter-Strike as they unfold. My name is LionHeartZ, welcome back to the channel, and before we start breaking down the action, all that I ask is that you take a second, leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about our opening matchup of the playoffs, Virtus.pro taking on Heroic. Now obviously I bring it up every time it happens because it's worth noting before going into this, I am Virtus.pro's #1 hater. I hate this lineup. I'm glad they lost, which is why I'm so happy that Heroic showed up and played to the level that we know they can, and they 2-0'd this team so quick. It was 13-8 on Ancient, it was 13-6 on Dust 2, not even remotely competitive games from Virtus.pro in this series. And listen, fair play, because I have been on Electronic's ass since he joined this lineup. Electronic was very good in this series, arguably the second best player for either team. He top fragged both maps, he was absolutely not the problem today, but the formulation of this roster, the way they play around each other, continues to be one of the most confusing out of any team relatively considered within the top 15. Their T sides are horrible, their CT sides are disjointed, and they are so reliant on Electronic or Jame or Flit or Fame having an insane performance to carry their asses over the line that when that inevitably just doesn't happen, and even sometimes when it does, they still manage to lose series. I literally can't think of the last time Virtus.pro beat a top 15 team in the world. In fact, hold on, let me go check. And listen, that's for good reason, because the last time they beat a top 15 or better team was Vitality and Complexity at the Esports World Cup, and the Esports World Cup isn't a fucking serious tournament. It's not a real tournament. I don't care. So those results don't even matter. They haven't won a significant game in a significant tournament against a top 15 or better team since before the player break at the Blast Spring Finals. This team sucks. Anyways, should probably talk about Heroic, seeing as how they were in this series too, and they played really good here. I think Heroic have been through a lot of trials and tribulation to start out this season since the player break. So many issues have prevented them from being able to play full tournaments consistently with their full rosters and be fully involved. And now it feels like EPL is their first real chance to do so, and they're taking advantage of that. Beating Virtus.pro here is great. Virtus.pro, against all odds, are still a top 10 team, and getting that kind of win is really good for the morale. Shush was a beast on both of these maps. Nerds and even Kicksan was having great moments as well. Tessus and Dexter really weren't needed, so they just kind of had okay numbers, but they weren't playing terrible either. And it's like I've said time and time and again, we know what this roster can do, we know what their potential is, it's just whether or not they're going to be able to put it all together in a tournament and make a run, and maybe they could do that here, I don't know. I really do have a lot of time for them though, and I hope they continue to at least perform well, even if they fall short of expectations. Moving on to our second matchup of the day, we had Big taking on the Mongolz. And in yesterday's video, I spent a fair amount of time talking about how much Big have impressed me with their run here at EPL, and how this new roster with Regon has really started to come together. And honestly, I would say that they're pretty comparable to the Mongolz in terms of strength on paper. I feel like these are very similar lineups, and because of that, this ended up being a very fun series to watch play out. All three games were very close. We went into double overtime on Ancient, where Big clutched out 22-19. Then on Nuke, it came down to the very last rounds, where Mongolz clutched it out 13-11. And on Mirage, the Mongolz, that's one of their best maps. For Big, it hasn't been very great for them, and the Mongolz took a 13-9 victory, the biggest margin throughout the series. But even then, it wasn't like Big so much faded down the stretch as much as the Mongolz were incredibly clutch when it counted. And clutch is the operative word here. If you go to the HLTV page for this match, you'll see that the Mongolz benefited from 1vx clutches on all three maps, and those kinds of rounds are backbreaking. If Mongolz loses those rounds, they could be economically broken, the momentum goes a different way, and suddenly this is a very different series for Big. But their ability to win those down the stretch were definitely the difference maker. On Ancient specifically, Big were better as a team than the Mongolz, whereas when you look at the scoreline, you see 9-10 and Techno leading the server with 38 and 32 kills respectively, but the difference is pretty much everybody on Big nearly had 30 at the end of it all. Meanwhile, Blitz and Mazzino really had forgettable performances. Searson continues to impress with the op in his hand, and even though they go on to lose this series, Searson's walking away with one of his better tournaments that I've seen in a while, which I think bodes well for Big's future. On Nuke, I really think Big are going to look back at this and look at the end of this game and be like, man, we were right there. This could have been our game. This could have been 2-0 had just a few rounds gone differently. I think you can pinpoint the exact moment things fell apart, and it was round 19 where they have Mongolz on a full save. And for a second, let's pause and look at the Big economy. If Big wins this round, they are so hard to have their economy broken. They are secure for pretty much the rest of the game. Because think about it, right? They win this round. They're already like over 5-6k on some players. If they convert the anti-eco, it's now 9-10. You're nearly tied up. And for the side of the Mongolz, they are having to play their economy round by round. They lose here, they full buy on the next. If you win that round, suddenly it's 10-10 and they might have to save again. And it's going to swing the entire momentum of the rest of the game because there's only a handful of rounds left. And with that much money banked, you might not have to save again. Instead, the Mongolz navigate a very smart round here where they send Mazzino on a solo mission down the vent while the rest of the players are going to work ramp. He's going to drop down the vent and he's going to work 3 picks down here. He takes Tabson unawares with a nade in his hand so he gets a free M4, and then 2 players are going to come down the vents. He's going to get the first one cleanly, then play Ring Around the Rosie with the other vent player, eventually wrapping around him and then one-tapping him with the P250. Meanwhile, his teammates take the other pick on ramp and they get the bomb down and they're able to wrap up this round nicely. Honestly, a bit of a communication error. They should not have allowed Mazzino to get more than just 1 pick off of Tabson. So instead of fortifying their economy, Big concede the eco loss. It's now 8-11. They have to rebuy into the next round. And unfortunately, Blitz pulls off an amazing 1vx clutch. Now, in fairness to Blitz, he navigates the 1v2 perfectly on top of the railing behind the silo, but I do think Big make one more crucial error, and that's that they swing just a little bit split from control, whereas if they just double peek him, they might be able just to get the trade in the round. Instead, they kind of just give him 2 1v1s, Blitz hits the shots cleanly, and that's a 4k clutch to get match point. And honestly, we ended up with a very similar story when we move on to Mirage, where once again, Big made this pretty competitive, all things considered when you look at the score, but they were unable to convert those low man situations, especially on their CT side, to open up this game. They allowed Mongolz to go on a 9-3 half, and even though Big did really well to go on a streak of their own on their T side, that kind of deficit is just so hard to overcome, especially in the 3rd game of a series, and ultimately, when you only have 4 mistakes to give up on your second half, and you gave up 3 of them in the first 4 rounds, you have to play flawlessly from a 4-12 scoreline. Yeah, listen, they went on a run, they made it close, they brought it all the way to that 9-13 scoreline we talked about, but when you only have the room to lose 1 round, sometimes the odds just aren't with you, and that's what happened here today. The Mongolz, they take the map, they take the series victory 2-1. Frankly, the most entertaining series of the day for my money. Definitely one I would suggest you go back and watch if you didn't get the chance to. Next up, we had Furia taking on Team Spirit, and to the shock of absolutely nobody, Furia got swept 2-0. Now listen, these weren't the biggest blowouts I've ever seen Team Spirit deliver, and frankly, Donk had only an average performance for him, which was still a 1.14 rating, which is still pretty good, but hey, you know, let's just not mince words here. But the problem for Furia really boils down to the fact that K Serato had only an average performance. I'm not going to relitigate the points I made in my previous recap, which you can watch here in the top right corner, but at the end of the day, K Serato is the man that Furia is going to turn to and expect superstar performances to get them through these series, and when he doesn't perform to that level, the fragging for this team falls short, and because they're not a super strategic team, they don't have the depth and the skill to work around their firepower difference. That means they are never going to have a chance against a team like Spirit unless they straight up capitulate and throw themselves. On the Spirit side, I think this was a great performance from Shiro. He looked dominant with the opponent's hands on both maps, and his impact really stepped in when Donk was only having okay numbers. And it wasn't even like Donk was being shut down per se, he just wasn't bursting into bomb sites and taking 3 kills before you could even blink. He was playing more like a prototypical entry, especially on the T sides. He'd go in, get 1, maybe 2 kills, get traded, and then Spirit would just walk through and win the round behind him. And fair play to Chopper, who had a great map on Nuke and played a great series himself, and normally you don't expect Chopper to do anything, so him top fragging definitely helped to fill the gaps. Other than that, there really wasn't that much remarkable that happened in this series. Like I said, 2-0 wasn't particularly close, and Spirit find themselves moving on to the next round. So let's go ahead and close out this video by talking about the match that closed out today, Faze taking on Complexity. Now, of course, I am nothing if not conflicted with the results of this match, because watching Complexity win a playoff series over Faze makes me want to rip my shirt off, grab my American flag, put on my helmet, start shooting guns everywhere, and scream. But on the other hand, I am a Faze fan, I'm a Kerrigan fanboy, and having it come at the behest of Faze once again struggling to perform to their level really does hurt. And I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about Faze than Complexity here, because Complexity, they did their job. They played very efficient team Counter-Strike, which is an oddity for them, where usually you expect Elise to have to be the difference maker, but here Grim, Halzerk, Floppy, they all had their moments. Elise was struggling on Anubis to start, but he finished out the rest of the series strong. And honestly, Grim had great impact, Halzerk did great with the AWP in his hands, and they navigated a lot of low-buy eco rounds very effectively to help give themselves extra rounds they otherwise wouldn't have gotten. So congrats to them, they take another really big win, which puts Complexity in position of being on one of the best streaks in this tournament, having beaten Mouse twice, Astralis twice, and now Faze en route to their next matchup. And now to talk about Faze, because I really do think we were at Code Red now with this lineup. This is the most disjointed, the most uncoordinated Faze that we have seen in a very long time. This team looks like it lacks identity, it lacks impact. When Frozen and Rops aren't playing out of their mind, they lack serious firepower. I think Brokey is one of the most inconsistent top oppers in the world, and when he's on, he looks amazing, but he does make a lot of routine mistakes. And while I still very much believe in Kerrigan as a leader and his decision making, the problem is that his decision making when it comes to what he does with himself creates a lot of holes for this FaZe Clan lineup. He takes a lot of swings that he really should not be in an effort to try and create space for his stars. I do wish he would play a little bit back and try to keep those deaths a little bit lower, but for whatever reason Kerrigan seems stuck in this place where he's trying to jumpstart his team, and because his team continues to struggle behind him, I feel like that leads to Kerrigan making more needless mistakes himself. And what really sucks is that Rops and Frozen were arguably the two best players in this series. Rops especially looks incredibly sharp, the best he's looked in quite a few tournaments, and time after time he nearly had miracle clutches where he was down 1v3, 1v4, and he was finding multiple insane headshots and nearly winning those situations. But it comes back to the bigger problem. If Rops is having to win those kinds of rounds, then something has massively gone wrong. And unfortunately, I think they're stuck with this lineup for at least through the next major, because making changes seems like it might be more tricky than just subbing out one player. If I had to take a guess, I do feel like this is going to be the last ride for somebody like Rain. I don't expect Rain to go to another team at this point in his career. I think we might be seeing him retire or step down, because at this point, what FaZe needs is more fragging, and you're not going to drop Rops, you're not going to drop Frozen, and finding another omper besides Brokey is going to be tough. I think you keep Kerrigan till he decides to hang it up, because who the hell is going to step in to take his place that's going to be good enough? All of that leaves Rain as the last man standing and the man most likely to be replaced. Whether it's with another anchor like Perfecto, maybe you reach out and you get Blame F from Fnatic, I don't know, but you need somebody who's going to put up more numbers so the volatility of Frozen and Brokey can be tempered a little bit and you're not so reliant on Romps to be like a top 2 player in the world for this team to win. The bottom line is, it's the darkest timeline for FaZe right now, because just a few months ago it feels like FaZe would have stomped out this Complexity. But the FaZe right now absolutely should have lost here. They don't look good enough for a team I consider to be number 3 in the world during the player break. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up our first breakdown for the EPL playoffs. Tomorrow, playoff round 2 is underway, and when that's wrapped up, you can come by the channel a few hours later and expect a brand new recap, so make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. These videos are powered by Advanced.gg. Make sure you check the link in the description down below, browse their excellent products, and if you decide to make a purchase, you can use my code LIONS10 for 10% off at checkout. Thank you to Advanced.gg. It lets them know that I sent you their way. Shout out to my channel members, Justin, Jesse, Furley, Bubblesj, and Dr. Cocktor for keeping the lights on. If you want to become a channel member, you can check the link in the description. $5 a month supports me directly. Thank you very much. Lastly, check me out on twitch.tv/LionHeartZ2. I stream Sunday through Friday at 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll be live tonight talking about the EPL shenanigans, playing Counter-Strike, trying not to lose my mind. Hopefully I'll see you there. Without any further ado, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.